The first time I saw him cry, it wasn't over anything that had just happened. It was over something he wouldn't tell me. We were in the car, parked outside my apartment, the radio still humming a soft country song under the rain. Noah just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield like he was watching a ghost walk by. I asked if he was okay. Twice. He said, "Yeah, just tired." But his voice cracked on the last word. At that moment, I knew there was something he'd been carrying. Something old, heavy, and hidden so deep it scared him just to touch it. Noah wasn't the type of man who cried. He was calm, careful, always thinking before he spoke. He laughed easily, fixed things around the house, and treated me like I was something fragile he didn't want to break. We'd been together for 2 years, planning a wedding in the fall, but that night, something shifted. I remember reaching for his hand, feeling how cold it was. He flinched slightly, just enough for me to notice, then whispered, "Can we not talk about this right now?" I wanted to ask, talk about what, but the words got stuck. That night, after he drove away, I stood by the window, watching his taillights fade into the fog. He had a habit of driving when he couldn't sleep, like the motion helped him outrun his thoughts. But deep down, I knew, whatever he was running from, it wasn't behind him. It was inside him, and I didn't know it then, but that one quiet night in the rain would be the start of everything. The lies, the drive to his hometown he swore didn't exist, the truth that would tear both of us open before it healed us. Because sometimes love doesn't fall apart. It just peels back the surface and shows you what's been buried underneath all along. For weeks after that night, I told myself to let it go. Everyone has things they don't talk about. Maybe Noah's just private. That's what I kept repeating. But then the cracks started to show. Little ones at first. He'd tense up whenever someone mentioned family. If a coworker asked about his parents, he'd smile and say, "Oh, they live far," and then change the subject. He didn't have family photos, not even a childhood picture. When I asked where he grew up, he'd answer, "A small place near the state border." Nothing worth remembering. I used to laugh it off, but after that night in the rain, those answers stopped sounding casual. They sounded rehearsed. One Sunday morning, while we were making breakfast, I noticed him freeze at the sound of a TV news story, something about a fire in a small Ohio town. His hands went still, spatula hovering midair. He didn't blink until I muted the sound. That's when I realized something. Whatever Noah was hiding wasn't just painful. It was haunting him. A week later, he mentioned he had to go on a work trip. Just 2 days, routine stuff. No location. No details. He kissed my forehead, promised to call, and left before sunrise. That same afternoon, while folding laundry, I found his wallet on the dresser, the one he never left behind. Inside was a folded receipt from a gas station 200 miles away. The town name made my chest tighten. Eldridge. I'd never heard of it, but something about the name felt wrong. I looked it up. Tiny town, barely a few streets. 1 diner, 1 motel, population, under 500. And at the very bottom of the search page, a headline from years ago caught my eye. Local teen dies in domestic altercation. Alcohol suspected. My throat went dry. The surname in the article was his. That night, I packed a small bag, left a note saying I'd be staying with my sister, and drove toward Eldridge. Halfway down the highway, the city lights faded behind me, and the road turned dark and quiet. The air smelled like rain and pine. My hands shook on the steering wheel, but I couldn't stop, because sometimes love doesn't give you peace until you walk straight into the storm it's been hiding. Eldridge wasn't even on most maps. If you blinked while driving, you'd miss it. The welcome sign leaned sideways, half covered in vines. A few shops sat abandoned. Windows cracked. Signs faded to ghosts of words. The diner looked alive, barely. One flickering light, one old man drinking coffee by the window. But it wasn't the emptiness that got to me. It was the feeling, like the air itself was holding its breath. I parked outside a small general store and asked the cashier if she knew a Noah Fields. She squinted at me, then looked down like she was searching through old memories she didn't want to find. "Fields," she repeated. "You mean the boy from the house near Mill Creek?" "Maybe," I said, pretending I knew what she meant. She hesitated. "You'll know it when you see it." Mill Creek wasn't a creek anymore, just a strip of muddy land behind a row of leaning houses. At the end of the road stood one home that looked like it had been forgotten decades ago. The paint had peeled to gray, and the porch leaned so far I wasn't sure it could hold its own weight. The mailbox still had the name on it, Fields, carved faintly into rust. My hands trembled as I got out of the car. The wind carried the faintest smell of smoke and alcohol, stale, sour, and lingering. I almost turned back. Almost. But curiosity has a way of pushing you further than fear ever can. I knocked once. Nothing. Twice. A shuffle inside. Then the door opened. The woman standing there looked older than her years. Hair unbrushed, eyes red-rimmed, bathrobe hanging off one shoulder. She squinted at me, confused and irritated. "Who are you?" she rasped. "What do you want?" "I'm looking for Noah," I said softly. At that, her face changed. Not shock, not recognition. Something colder, like anger mixed with shame. Her mouth twitched. "He doesn't live here. Hasn't in years. You tell him I don't need his charity." Before I could respond, a voice from inside called out. Young, sharp, full of defiance. "Grandma, stop yelling! You're scaring people again." I turned just in time to see a girl, maybe 12, with tangled hair and striking gray eyes, step into the doorway. The woman glared at her. The girl glared right back, and for a split second, I saw it. The same eyes Noah had. The girl's voice trembled, but her words didn't. "Don't listen to her." "You're looking for Noah, right?" "He's my uncle." My stomach dropped. The girl's name was Mara, and the moment she said he's my uncle, I forgot how to breathe. Her grandmother, if you could still call her that, muttered something under her breath and stumbled back into the house, a half-empty bottle clinking on the table behind her. Mara didn't flinch. She just crossed her arms like she'd seen this 100 times before. "You're not from here," she said. It wasn't a question. "No," I managed. "I'm a friend of Noah's." "Friend or fiancé?" she asked bluntly, my stomach twisted. "You know about me?" Mara gave a short, bitter laugh. "He sends money sometimes. I see your name on the envelopes, so he hadn't completely cut them off." The porch creaked as I stepped closer. "Can we talk?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "Not here. She'll start yelling again." We walked down the road, past old fences and junked cars half sunk into dirt. The air smelled faintly of rain and rust. Mara kicked at a stone, her hands shoved deep into her jacket. "You shouldn't have come here," she said finally. "He hates this place." "I can see why." She smirked, but there was no joy in it. "You think you know him, don't you?" I didn't answer. She stopped walking and turned to me, her expression sharp, older than her years. "He used to come back every month. Always brought food, clothes, books for me, but then something happened and he stopped." "What happened?" I asked. Mara looked away, toward a patch of woods beyond the houses. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "My dad died. They said it was an accident. But it wasn't. And Noah, he thinks it's his fault." The words hit like a punch. I wanted to ask more, but Mara's eyes filled with a mix of anger and pain that stopped me cold. She wrapped her arms around herself and whispered, almost to the air, "He never talks about that night." None of them do, but I remember. I remember everything. Before I could respond, thunder rolled in the distance, sharp, low, and endless. Mara turned back toward the road. "You should leave before she starts drinking again," she said quietly. "But if you really want to know the truth, come back tomorrow, same time." Then she ran, her small figure vanishing into the gray horizon. I stood there, rain beginning to fall, realizing I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Whatever Noah had been hiding. It wasn't just pain. It was tragedy. When I pulled up the next afternoon, Mara was already waiting. Same jacket, same guarded look, but something in her eyes was different. softer, like she'd made up her mind about me. She climbed into the passenger seat of my car without a word and nodded toward the woods. "Drive there," she said. The dirt road wound through twisted trees and patches of broken fences. When we finally stopped near the edge of a clearing, she got out first, walking until she stood beside a rusted swing set half swallowed by weeds. "This is where it happened," she said. The air went still. Even the wind seemed to hold back. Mara crouched, tracing circles in the dirt with a stick. Back then, Noah came every weekend. He tried to take care of us. Me, my dad, and Grandma. My dad wasn't perfect, but he tried. He worked nights at the mill, came home exhausted, and drank to shut it all out. But he was gentle. "Until Tony started showing up, Tony?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Grandma's boyfriend, the kind of man who drinks until the bottle's empty and then looks for something to break." Mara's voice cracked. That night they were fighting again, screaming. I was in my room. Dad came home early and he heard them. He tried to pull Tony away, but Tony had a knife. By the time Noah got there, it was already over. I felt the world tilt. "Your dad," she nodded. "He died before the ambulance came. Tony ran. Grandma told the cops it was self-defense, but everyone knew it wasn't." Mara's hands shook, but she didn't cry. Noah lost it. He blamed himself for not being there sooner. He smashed every bottle in the house. Then he grabbed me and said, "You're never staying here again." But he didn't have custody. He couldn't take me. They made him leave. The silence after that was unbearable. Mara looked up at me, her voice trembling. "He stopped coming after the funeral. He couldn't stand the sight of this place, or her. But he still sends money, and every time I see his name on an envelope, I know he still cares. He just can't come back." I swallowed hard, tears burning behind my eyes. Now I understood the way Noah froze when people mentioned family, the way he refused to drink, the way he avoided anything that could make him lose control. He wasn't hiding a secret. He was hiding his grief. Mara stood, brushing dirt off her jeans. "He doesn't know I remember everything. If you tell him I told you, he'll never forgive me." "I won't," I promised. She nodded, started walking toward the road, then stopped. "He still loves us, you know," she said quietly. "He just doesn't believe he deserves to." When she disappeared into the trees, I stood alone in the fading light, feeling the weight of Noah's silence settle over me like a shadow. And for the first time, I wasn't sure what scared me more, the truth I'd just learned, or the fact that I had to face him with it. By the time I got home, it was almost midnight. The house was dark, except for the soft yellow light spilling from the kitchen. Noah was there, sitting at the table, head in his hands, an untouched mug of coffee in front of him. He didn't even look up when I came in. "I know where you went," he said quietly. His voice was calm, but it wasn't the kind of calm that brings peace. It was the kind that hides a storm. My throat went dry. "Then you know I had to." He finally lifted his eyes, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw fear there. Not anger, fear. "You shouldn't have gone there, Claire," he said. "You don't understand what that place does to people." "I do now," I said, stepping closer. I met Mara. That hit him like a blow. His whole body went still, his jaw tightening as his eyes glossed over. "She told you," he whispered. I nodded. "About your dad, about that night." He pushed back from the table so suddenly the chair scraped hard against the floor. "You had no right?" "I had every right," I snapped. "I'm supposed to marry you, Noah. I deserve to know what you're running from." He froze at that, breathing hard. His voice dropped to a rough whisper. "You don't get it. That house, that woman, that night, it's poison. Every time I think about it, I feel like I'm back there, holding him while he bled out on the floor." Tears burned behind my eyes. "You were just a kid. It wasn't your fault." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "I told him I'd be there. I promised. But it snowed that night, and I stayed in Cleveland because I didn't want to drive tired. I thought I'd see him in the morning. By the time I got there, he was gone." He covered his face with his hands, his voice breaking. I can still smell the blood. Still hear her crying. I hated her for what she let happen. I hated myself even more for not being there. I crossed the room and knelt beside him, taking his trembling hands in mine. You've been punishing yourself for something no one could have stopped. You survived, Noah. That's not guilt. That's strength. He looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time, I saw a man who'd been broken for years but didn't know how to put himself back together. I pressed his hand to my chest. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. His voice cracked as he whispered, You don't know how heavy it is. I don't, I said softly. But I want to. The silence that followed was thick with years of unsaid things. The air felt heavier, but lighter at the same time, like something long buried had finally been unearthed. When Noah finally spoke again, his voice was barely audible. I want to make it right. For her, for him, for me. And that's when I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of his redemption. The next morning, I woke to find Noah already dressed, jacket on, keys in hand. He was standing by the door, staring at the floor, like the decision in his head was still fighting to get out. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. I'm going back. I sat up fast. To Eldridge? He nodded. I can't keep pretending it's behind me. Mara's still there. My mom's still drinking. And Daniel... He stopped, his voice catching on the name. He's still waiting for me to say goodbye. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. There was something about the way he said goodbye, like it wasn't just to his brother, but to the boy he used to be. I got out of bed and walked over, wrapping my arms around him. Then I'm coming with you, he hesitated. You don't have to. I do, I said firmly. You're not doing this alone. The drive to Eldridge felt different this time. No secrecy, no lies, just the quiet hum of tires on the road and the sound of our hearts catching up to the truth. Noah barely spoke, but I could feel the storm inside him. His hands gripped the wheel tighter the closer we got. Every mile seemed to pull another memory out of him. When we reached the outskirts of town, he slowed down, taking in the familiar streets, the same ones I'd seen through Mara's eyes. He exhaled shakily. It's smaller than I remember, he murmured. It's okay, I said softly. You're not that scared kid anymore. He parked in front of the house. The paint was worse than before, the porch sagging deeper. Empty bottles still littered the steps. For a long minute, he didn't move. Then he whispered, I promised Daniel I'd get her out. I told him I'd protect her. You tried, I said gently. You did everything you could. He shook his head. Not enough. I left Mara there. I reached for his hand. Then let's change that. He turned to me, eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before. Resolve. If she'll let me, I'll take her with us. She deserves better. As he opened the car door, the cold air rushed in, carrying that same faint smell of smoke and wet wood. It wasn't just a return, it was a reckoning. And as we walked toward that broken house together, I realized that love isn't about erasing someone's past. It's about holding their hand while they face it. The front door opened before we even reached it. She must have heard the car. Noah's mother, Linda, stood there in the doorway, squinting against the light. Her face was worn, her robe still stained, her eyes glassy from whatever she'd been drinking that morning. At first, she didn't seem to recognize him. Then her mouth fell open, and she let out a bitter laugh. Well, look who remembered where he came from. Noah froze. His voice barely came out. Hi, Mom. The word Mom seemed to cut through her. She swayed slightly, gripping the doorframe for balance. You shouldn't have come back, she said. You think you can just waltz in here like nothing happened? He stepped closer. I came to talk. Her eyes narrowed. Talk about what? About how you left? About how you blamed me for your brother's death? The words hit like slaps. I saw Noah flinch, his jaw tightening, but he didn't back down. I blamed you because I had to blame someone, he said quietly, but I blame myself more. Every single day. Linda's face twisted. You think I wanted this life? You think I wanted to lose a son and watch another one run away? Her voice cracked mid-sentence. She turned toward the table, slamming her bottle down so hard it tipped. Daniel tried to stop that man, Noah said, his voice trembling. He died protecting you. Don't you dare. she started, but he didn't let her finish. You let him in. You let all of them in. And you never stopped. You drank yourself numb while we begged you to see what was happening. She froze, her face pale. For a long, unbearable moment, no one spoke. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. I know. Noah blinked, stunned. I know what I did, she said again, her hands shaking. And I know I killed him, just like you said. Every time I close my eyes, I see his face. I can't drink enough to make it go away. Her words broke him. The anger drained from his body, replaced by something softer. Sorrow. He stepped forward, tears in his eyes. Then stop trying to drown it, Mom. Stop pretending it didn't happen. You don't have to keep killing yourself for what's already done. Linda looked up, her face collapsing into grief. Why did you come back? She whispered. To forgive you, he said. And to take Mara. At the sound of her name, Mara appeared in the hallway, clutching a backpack, watching everything unfold with wide eyes. Linda turned toward her granddaughter, then back to Noah. For the first time, there was no bitterness in her face, only exhaustion. Take her, she said quietly, before she ends up like me. Mara stepped forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. Noah knelt, pulling her into his arms, holding her like he'd been waiting his whole life to. Linda turned away, covering her mouth as she started to sob, small, broken sounds that filled the silence of the house. Noah held his sister tighter and whispered, You're safe now. I promise. For the first time in years, he'd kept one. We left that same afternoon. Noah didn't look back, and neither did I. Mara sat in the back seat, clutching her backpack like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. The air in the car was heavy but calm, the kind of quiet that follows a storm, when the world feels bruised but cleaner somehow. We drove for almost 2 hours before Noah spoke. I need to see him, he said softly. He didn't have to say who. I just nodded and followed the directions he gave. A small cemetery on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the wind whistles through trees and time seems to stop. When we reached the grave, Noah stopped walking a few feet away. For a long moment, he just stood there, his breathing uneven. Then he sank to his knees. The headstone was simple. Daniel Fields, beloved son and brother, 1992-2011. Noah reached out, tracing the name with his fingers. His shoulders trembled as he whispered, I'm sorry. Mara knelt beside him, her small hand finding his. He knew you loved him, she said quietly. He told me. Noah's head jerked up. He did? She nodded, eyes glistening. He said you were the only person who ever believed he could be more than this town. That broke him. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, sobbing like he'd been holding it in for years. I stood back, my own tears falling silently. Watching them, I understood something. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It just makes room for healing to begin. When Noah finally stood, he laid a small folded note against the headstone. I promised I'd take care of her, he whispered. This time I'll keep it. As he turned toward me, there was something different in his eyes. Not the haunted look he'd carried for years, but a quiet steadiness, like he'd finally exhaled after a lifetime of holding his breath. We stood together in the cold wind, Mara's small hand gripping both of ours, the three of us bound not by blood or guilt, but by the choice to keep going. Before we left, Noah glanced back one last time and whispered, Goodbye, Danny. And in that moment, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. It's been 6 months since that day at the cemetery. 6 months since Noah said goodbye to the brother he could never save, and the guilt that nearly destroyed him. Our lives look different now. Quieter, but fuller in all the ways that matter. We moved to a small town by the coast, far from Eldridge but close enough that it still feels like Ohio air when it rains. The apartment is small, bright, and messy in the best way. There are books on every table, dishes in the sink, and laughter where silence used to live. Mara has her own room now. The first night she slept here, she left the door cracked open, just in case. The second night, it stayed shut. She's joined the school art club, and sometimes I'll find her sketching by the window, drawing faces from memory. Some I recognize, some I don't. Noah still flinches when he hears shouting, or when a glass breaks, but he's learning to breathe through it. He started volunteering at a local youth gym, teaching boxing to kids who remind him too much of himself. They love him. They call him Coach N, and I can see it in his eyes every time he steps into that ring. He's building something he never had. Sometimes, late at night, he'll look at me and whisper, "I still dream about him." And I'll answer, "That means he's still with you." We never talk about forgiveness like it's some grand event. It's smaller than that. A quiet decision you make every morning to stop running from yesterday. Last week, a letter came in the mail. It was from Linda. Her handwriting was shaky, but the message was clear. "I've started going to meetings. Tell Noah I'm trying." He read it 3 times, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his wallet. He didn't say much, just smiled. That quiet, grateful kind of smile that says maybe things can be okay after all. That night, as the 3 of us sat on the porch watching the sunset burn orange over the water, Mara leaned her head on Noah's shoulder and whispered, "Do you think Daniel would have liked it here?" Noah looked out at the horizon and smiled softly. "Yeah," he said. "I think he would have loved it." And for the first time since I met him, his voice didn't sound heavy anymore. The pain was still there, the kind that never really leaves, but it had changed shape. It wasn't a wound now, it was a story about love that survived everything trying to break it. As the sky darkened and the waves whispered against the shore, I realized something simple but true. Healing doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from facing the darkness together and still choosing light. And that's what we did, every single day.